Hello all, a great afternoon and a warm welcome to each and every one of you who have signed in into this particular session. So to introduce myself, this is Sureka Bhaskar and I am here on behalf of Narayana IAS Academy to take up this important topic of international relations or important international organizations, the regions in news as well as the miscellaneous topics that have been in the current affairs for the past 1.5 years starting from January 2024 till this particular month of March or April 2025. Okay, and for further updates, in case if you feel that you would actually miss out on any important news, we actually have our monthly edition of the Navigator magazine that is uploaded on our Navigator website. Okay, so as you see, this is actually a part of our prelims masterclass that we started targeting the highly potential areas or the topics of current affairs that can appear in your upcoming preliminary examination, that is prelims 2025 examination. Okay, so we actually started with polity, and then we continued with economy, we finished history, art and culture, then you would have seen me taking up environment and ecology, and few topics of geography we had successfully completed, and then we moved on to another important topic, that is important schemes as well as government initiatives in news, followed by the global reports and indices and the Indian reports and indices, what has been the performance of India with different targets and whether our ranking has improved with a significant improvement in our score or not, and all other social parameters we have analyzed. Okay, now we have shifted our gear to another major important theme, that is this international organizations in news. Okay, so here we had actually started with this international organization, and this actually happens to be the third class of this particular theme. So we had already completed two successful lectures where we had covered significant important topics. Okay, so as per our norm, let us actually see what are all the topics we have already completed and quickly move towards what is the topic that we will be taking up today. Okay, so if you see this particular screen, we started with the United Nations organization. If you people remember, can you see yellow color? Yeah. Okay, so we started with the United Nations organizations, if you know, and why United Nations organization actually came into effect after the Second World War. What are the major organs that are functioning under the United Nations, and what are the functions of each organs? And we saw 6 different organs with the recently suspended Trusteeship Council. Okay, so we started with the UNSC. Okay, so United Nations Security Council. So I hope this is visible, the color is visible. Yeah, so we started with the United Nations Security Council, where India, along with other groupings like L69 as well as C10 group of countries, have actually, requested, or they have strongly pressed on the reforms in order to expand the representativeness in the UNSC, which actually has only 15 members, 5 permanent as well as 10 non-permanent members, of which India is also a part. So we looked at what is this UNSC and how it is governed by what is this UN Charter, whether inclusion and exclusion of a member requires amendment to the Charter, and so on. All that we discussed here. Okay. Then we moved on to discuss about the UN peacekeeping force. So what do you mean by UN peacekeeping or the blue helmets? Okay, so what do you mean by UN peacekeeping? What is the contribution of different countries towards these armed forces, whether they are voluntary forces, where are the personals, who are the personals, where they come from, what is the contribution of different countries? All that we looked at, because India commemorated the 76th International Day of the UN peacekeeping forces. Okay, and where we saw Bangladesh actually stands out as the first country with the increased number of personnel being given towards the, or being employed as the UN peacekeeping forces. Okay, then we moved on to discuss about the UN Statistical Commission, where India actually had continued its 4-year term in the UN Statistical Commission. So here we discussed about what is the significance of statistics, that is from the procurement of data, how you analyze it, how you interpret it, and finally how you disseminate the data in terms of economic growth, in terms of environmental sustainability efforts, and so on. So this is what was your UN Statistical Commission. Then we moved on to understand what is the importance or the feasibility of Palestine becoming a member or full-time member of the United Nations. So whether it requires the amendment to the Charter of the United Nations, which actually acts as the guiding principle for the functioning, and it acts as a guideline, okay, for the functioning of the United Nations, whether that actually has to be amended or not, whether it needs the unanimous voting of this particular resolution by all the members of the UNDA or the UNSC. Okay, then we looked at the veto power of the UNSC. What call do they actually have to take? What is the supremacy or the superiority they hold when compared to that of the other members? All that we saw here. Then we discussed about the United States as well as the other Western countries, specifically the countries from the European Union, moving out or stopping their funds towards this particular United Nations Relief and Work Agency supporting the Palestinian refugees in the Near East. Okay, so this is actually a funding agency which is used for funding or provide any kind of support to the Palestinian refugees. But now United States along with certain other Western countries have actually stopped their funding to this UNRWA. So that is why this news was significant. Then we moved on to the United Nations chief invoking the Article 99 of the UN Charter. So we saw the significance of the UN Charter and what is this Article 99, what is the power it actually gives to the UN Secretary General, and what are the cases which he can actually refer to the UNSC depending upon the emergency of the cases. Okay, so this is what we discussed over here. And then we moved on to discuss about the International Seabed Authority, which is one of the international agencies under the UNCLOS, the other two being the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea, and the next one is the Commission, okay, for the limitation of continental shelves. So International Seabed Authority is the third international agreement under UNCLOS, where it actually is responsible for giving you the license and permission for exploration in the beyond the high seas area, specifically in the area which is called as the seabed area. So there we actually saw the demarcation of the entire ocean area as the contiguous zone, then the territorial zone, then the contiguous zone, the exclusive economic zone, and then the extension of the continental shelf, the continental slope, the rays, as well as the seabed area. Okay, so all this we saw, and what are the jurisdiction of the coastal region and where is the jurisdiction, it does not stay within the jurisdiction. What are all the permissions given to the other nations as well beyond the high seas? Okay, so all this we discussed in the International Seabed Authority. Next we discussed about the International Maritime Organization, to which India got re-elected, okay, with the highest vote tally. So we looked at what is this International Maritime Organization, what is the significance, when it did come into existence, and the role it actually plays in the global community. The next one, we spoke about India commemorating the 150th anniversary of the International Postal Union. That is why it has released few postage stamps, okay, commemorating the the service that is actually given by the International Postal Union. Earlier it was the Telegraph Union through the Telegraph Convention that came into existence, and then it became the IPU. And following that, we saw this International Telecommunication Union, which the meeting or the annual summit was actually held in Delhi recently, and we saw what is the significance of ITU and how does it actually help or cater to the services of communication worldwide. Okay, and what are the guidelines and provisions it actually gives for deploying the satellites in which orbit and how which bands have to be used, all that we discussed over here. And finally we saw India contributing around half a million to what, half a million to this particular international global counter-terrorism fund. Okay, and this actually shows how India is leaned or inclined towards contributing to anti or the counter-terrorism network, or you can say counter-terrorism strategy. All that we discussed in the first class. Okay, so almost we discussed around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So here 11 international bodies were discussed in the first class. So this is for the first timers watching the video. Okay, so that you will actually get a confidence that yes, you are going on the right track for the preparation of current affairs. Okay, now moving on, in the second class yesterday we started with the other international organization, the first of which is your World Trade Organization. Okay, World Trade Organization, where WTO actually celebrated, World Trade Organization, it celebrated the 30th anniversary of the signing of the Marrakesh Agreement. Okay, so Marrakesh Agreement was signed in the year 1994. So earlier there was actually one international organization which was set up in 1947, I think, after the World War. So this was actually GATT, that is General Agreements on Trade and Tariffs, where it majorly catered to the global trade on goods. However, in order to make it more comprehensive and inclusive, and in order to deal not only with goods but also services, innovation, intellectual property, new designs, etc., and new discoveries, we had this particular World Trade Organization through the Marrakesh Agreement. Okay, so we discussed about the WTO, and then we moved on to Brazil having the presidency or the presidentship of the BRICS, which actually stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, where Indonesia has actually been the recent member which joined the grouping in 2025. Okay, and there are other members also, like you have Saudi Arabia, and then you have Iran, not Iraq, and then you have Ethiopia, Egypt also being a part of this. So we discussed about the BRICS grouping and how significant is it for India, and what are the efforts which are by the BRICS, that is the New Development Bank, and so on. Okay, then we moved on to the G7 grouping. Okay, so G7 grouping, where the 50th meeting of the G7 grouping actually took place in Italy, to which Prime Minister Narendra Modi also participated. So we actually saw the significance of the G7 countries, because these are the most advanced countries. And how to remember the G7, I told you there are 3 members from the UNSC itself. Remaining 4 are what? The partners of France. Okay, so France, that is Italy and Germany, and then you have to include Japan. Okay, and then when Japan and Canada, and if you actually include Russia, that grouping becomes G8, and remove Russia and include 4 more, like you have the Switzerland, Netherlands, Belgium, etc., then what happens? It becomes G10. That is G10, it sounds, but then it's a group of 11 countries. Okay, and then you have other countries like India as well as Africa. If you join everything together, then it becomes G20. So we discussed about the G7 grouping yesterday. Then we moved on to understand how Quad, that is the quadrilateral security dialogue, that actually started as a, it started in the backdrop of what? The 2004 tsunami. Okay, so the countries actually came together. Specifically, you have Australia, Japan, US, as well as India. They came together and realized how it is important to provide the humanitarian assistance and the aid to the people affected by the tsunami. But since then, it has actually transformed now into a strategic or a diplomatic grouping. Okay, so this strategic grouping, how does it face the different geopolitical challenges, all that we discussed over here. So this is the topic of Quad. Okay, then moving forward, we saw the recent warrant that has been provided by the International Criminal Court to arrest the Israel's Prime Minister. Okay, on grounds of genocide or crime against humanity. So we actually saw what is this particular concept of ICC, that is the International Criminal Court, and how does it differ from the International Court of Justice, whether it is a part of the United Nations or not. No, it is not a part of United Nations. This actually tries the individuals, where the ICJ actually focuses on resolving the disputes between 2 members of the United Nations. Okay, so all these we actually discussed about this particular topic on ICC. Then we moved on to Australia, which is a part of the AUKUS, that is Australia, UK, US tripartite, agreement, where it actually signed an agreement saying that there has to be sharing of nuclear secrets as well as other materials. Okay, so here we understood about this AUKUS grouping, which actually focuses on the enhancement of defense technologies, and we saw how it is different from Quad, where Quad focuses on what? The regional security, the economic growth, as well as the infrastructure development of the Indo-Pacific region. This actually focuses on what? The enhancement of technology, where the advanced countries comparatively, that is US and UK, will actually assist Australia under first pillar of the AUKUS agreement in order to what? To have the accessibility to the nuclear submarines and so on. Okay, so this is what. Next we actually moved on to understand about the NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Okay, so here we actually saw the collective security principle of the NATO. That is why the US President Trump had actually said that he won't support any of the ally in case they are not contributing to the defense security of the North Atlantic region. Okay, so we saw what is the eligibility criteria and what are the pillars that all these countries actually have to focus. The Article 5 of the collective security principle that came into existence after the 9/11 terror attacks on the USA. Okay, so we discussed about the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, who are the members, etc. Then we discussed about the INS Talwar, which actually confiscated around 1,000 kilograms of drugs in the Arabian Sea. Okay, so this is actually as a combined effort or the coordination which it had with the combined maritime forces. So we saw what are the combined maritime forces and the areas where it actually operates. Although task force, it is actually having different, type 1, 2, 3 task force 1, 2, 3 and 4 in different Gulf areas as well as the regions, all that we discussed here. Then we moved on to the allegation which was placed by Canada on India, linking the assassination or the killing of the Khalistan extremist Niger, okay, in Canada, and opposing which New Zealand has questioned the claims that Canada made on India. So both these countries, that is Canada and New Zealand, are part of the intelligence sharing network of 5 English speaking countries. These are called as the 5 Alliance, where you have the Australia, you have New Zealand, you have UK, US as well as Canada. Okay, so this is what is the status. And then we move to understand the L69 grouping, and then you have the G4 grouping as well as the C10 grouping, all this coming together, increasing their proposal for the reforms that were required in order to expand the representation of the UNEC, which has only 5 permanent members who have a superiority with respect to that of the veto that they can cast. Okay, this is the one. Now we also started with this particular article. This is nothing but the recovery asset recovery inter-agency network. Okay, so this is what is called ARIN network of the Asia Pacific. Okay, so how do you trace, how do you freeze as well as recover the assets that have been collected, or you can say that have been a result of the unlawful activities of different companies as well as different individuals across the Asia Pacific region? How do you recover and freeze those assets? Okay, so this is what for this purpose there is actually a framework that is called as the asset recovery interagency framework of the Asia Pacific. Today we'll be discussing, that is starting with this particular topic. Okay, then we'll move on to discuss about the International Police Commission, or it's an association, okay, so of the international police, where there is there is actually communication between the agencies, okay, or the criminal investigation agencies between different countries, even though two countries do not have any kind of a bilateral relation or a strategic partnership. How do you help each other in case of spotting an individual or a defaulter? Okay, so this is what it is, and what are the different warrants or the notices that the Interpol actually releases. It can be a red notice, it can be a black notice, in order to find more information about unidentified bodies, etc. So this is your Interpol. Okay, next one is your OPEC. This is Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Okay, so OPEC Plus recently has announced that they will keep their what you say is that oil production cut, and that will be moving into 2025 also. We will see what was the background behind this particular decision. Is it the US shale oil that is actually being produced or not? First of all, what is OPEC? Who were the founding members? After that, whether Ecuador is a part of it now or not, and then we will move on to OPEC plus, why it was actually signed between the OPEC countries along with the other countries. So we will actually discuss this in this particular article. And finally, we will be talking about the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which actually talks about a coordinated effort and economic integration in the Indo-Pacific region. Okay, so we'll be discussing all this. So after completing this, we will move on to other topics as well, which are part of this, which is not mentioned over here. We'll discuss about the IMF loan instruments. So recently also you had the loan instruments of IMF, which has actually been extended to Pakistan because of this, the diplomacy, or what you can say is the strike that actually happened between India as well as Pakistan. Then we will talk about the International Energy Agency, where India is actually seeking a full-time membership. Then we'll talk about the Globe Network, okay, which is an anti-corruption network, of which the Enforcement Directorate and the Central Bureau of Investigation actually acts as representatives of India. And then we will also discuss about two or more topics are actually here. So we will discuss all those articles also, apart from this IMF, IEA as well as the Globe Network. Okay. Now we will move forward to the next interesting topic, what we will be taking up today. Very quickly, I will give you a gist of what are all the topics that we are going to do. Okay, so let us quickly see what are all the topics. So the first one is the topic of ASEAN. Is it visible? Yes. So it is association of Southeast Asian nations. Okay, so you have many countries like Singapore, Indonesia, then Malaysia, then you have Philippines, then you have Laos, Cambodia, and so on. So all these members of this particular grouping has actually asked the Myanmar junta, because there's civil war going on in Myanmar, right, where the government has actually been overthrown by the military. That is what is called as junta in Myanmar. So this grouping, that is ASEAN grouping, has asked the military junta in order to focus on ceasefire in Myanmar, okay, rather than to focus on conducting fresh elections. Okay, so this is why this particular organization is in news, and it's important for us to understand this regional grouping. So all these are regional groupings. Okay, the next one is RCEP. So India seeks to be an important, you can say, be a member of this RCEP. This is nothing but Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Okay, India wants to be a part of this RCEP. It has 15 members, where there are 10 ASEAN members, we are already saw, and there are 5 members, that is with where there is free trade agreement. Okay, you have countries like China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. These are the FTA members. So RCEP actually has 15 members, where India wants to be a part of. Okay, next we will discuss about SAARC. Okay, this is South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. For regional cooperation. So here you had the Bangladesh interim government leader. He actually wanted to revive the functioning of SAARC. Okay, so SAARC actually consists of how many members? Okay, so whether it is 7 or 8 members, whoever is watching, please mention in the please do mention in the comment section how many members does SAARC actually have, apart from India, whether it includes Maldives, whether there is Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, and what are all the countries are a part of it. Okay, so we'll discuss about the SAARC grouping. Then we talk about the Pacific Island Forum. Pacific Island Forum, and the recent meeting of this actually took place in Tonga. Okay, so this is actually a country in Oceania. So we'll be discussing about the Pacific Island Forum. 18 countries are a part of it. So whether India is a part of it or not, all that we will discuss over here. Then we will talk about BIMSTEC. Okay. So this is nothing but Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation. Okay. So this is actually BIMSTEC. We will see why this particular BIMSTEC is actually in the news. Okay. Whether the recent meeting took place. Yes, India actually hosted the second BIMSTEC Foreign Ministerial Conclave. Okay, so this is what it is. So we'll discuss about this Bay of Bengal initiative. What is the BIMSTEC? Who are all the nations which are involved, and what is the role of India? How it is significant for India, and all that. Next, we'll talk about the Colombo Security Conclave. So what is this Colombo Security Conclave? Here, Bangladesh has joined as the fifth member of the Colombo Security Conclave. So who are the 5 other members? You need to mention. Okay. So whether India is a part of it or not, whether Maldives is there, Sri Lanka is there, Mauritius is there. These are the 4 other members, where Bangladesh is actually the 5th member. Okay. Next one, you actually see India has assumed the chair of the Colombo process. So what do you mean by the Colombo process? Okay. So under Colombo process, you actually have thematic working groups. Okay. For example, providing skills as well as qualifications. That is actually headed by whom? That is headed by Sri Lanka. Whereas remittances, this thematic is actually headed, this theme is headed by Pakistan. Okay. And similarly, you have other things also, okay, like you spoke about skill development, then remittances, and then other kinds of qualifications. So let's see where Bangladesh actually tops it, who actually heads, what's the role of India, whether India is a part of it or not, all that we will see. Next one, we'll talk about the Gulf Cooperation Council. Gulf Cooperation Council. Why this GCC in news? Council, GCC. Why this is in news? Already it has actually been a PYQ, because they have come together in order to give an integrated tourist visa, just like the European Schengen visa. Okay, so we will see how significant is GCC, when did it actually come into existence, and all those details we will see. Then we will talk about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Okay, this SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, that actually came, and the meeting of it was held in Astana. Astana, where is it located? Is it Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan? Please mention in the comment section. So we'll look at SCO, and then we will look at this particular ECOWAS. Okay, so Economic Community of the West African States. What is it? Economic Community of the West African States. Okay, so here if you see different countries, like you have the Niger, you have Burkina Faso, and then Ecuador. I think they have actually opted out of this particular ECOWAS. So it's important for us to know about this particular grouping. Next, we will talk about the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. And finally, we'll be discussing about Mercosur. Okay, Mercosur. Okay, so all these organizations are on our list today. So all these actually have to be completed in 1.5 hours of time. Okay, so let's quickly get started so that we actually meet our target today successfully. Okay, so can we get started? Okay, so let us start with the very first article. So this first article is what? This is the continuation of yesterday's international organization. Okay, international organization, it's a continuation. So let's continue with Asset Recovery Interagency Network of Asia Pacific. Okay, so India has been represented by the Enforcement Directorate, and that has been a part of the steering committee of this particular Asset Recovery Interagency Network of the Asia Pacific. So that is why this particular article is in news. Now it is important for us to see what do you mean by asset recovery. Asset recovery is nothing but you have to trace, that is any kind of assets that have been created in an economy as a result of unlawful activities by either the company or the individual. That is called as what? The asset recovery. Okay. So how do you trace that asset? If you trace also, how do you freeze that asset and then confiscating it and returning all that? Okay. So that is called as asset recovery. So you understood what is the meaning, and it is enshrined in the United Nations Convention Against Corruption as that came in 2003 as a fundamental principle of international law. Now we will see what do you mean by this ARINAP, that is the Asia Pacific region of networks. Okay, so this is nothing but it's a multi-agency network in order to facilitate the information with respect to what are all the individuals and the companies which are creating assets by unlawful activities, and it is a part of the Camden Asset Recovery Interagency Network. So what do you mean by Camden? This is nothing but it is an informal network. So informal network of law enforcement. Okay. So let us see about this particular Camden. So this is actually an informal network of law enforcement, as well as it has judicial experts who work on the asset recovery across different jurisdictions, okay, around the globe. And then the full name is Camden Asset Recovery Interagency Network. So that is why it is called as CARIN. Okay. The purpose is it actually supports the full asset recovery process, okay, from tracing to freezing, seizure, management, as well as confiscation, or the forfeiture of the assets across the jurisdictions. Next one is the secretariat is located in Europol, that is Hague, Netherlands, and then the membership, it currently has 61 registered member jurisdictions. So this actually includes 27 EU members as well as other 13 international organizations. The finance, it is funded by the European Union, very, very important. Okay. So this is what is your CARIN. Okay. Now let's move forward to see the objectives. Obviously, we saw the objectives is what? You have to recover the proceeds of all the crimes. Okay. So it focuses on proceeds of all the crimes under international obligation. And it has very strong network with organizations like the UNODC, that is United Nations Office on Drugs as well as Crime. Okay. As well as CARIN. So promotes training on tackling the proceeds of the crime and enhances the effectiveness of asset tracing, freezing and confiscation in order to actually put the criminals under radar, okay, and also from preventing them by using the illicit profits. Next one, membership, 28 member jurisdictions. Don't confuse it with the members of Camden, okay. So 28 member jurisdiction and 9 observer for cross-border collaboration in asset recovery, and it is managed by the Korean Supreme Prosecutor Office, and the geographic ranges the entire range of Asia as well as Pacific, including Oceania as well as countries in the Pacific Rim. Okay, so that is the what to say, that is all is with the previous article, which is actually on Asia Pacific network. Okay, so the next one is the International Criminal Police Organization, that is Interpol, which actually marked 100th year of its anniversary. Okay, so 2023 marked the 100 years of Interpol, that is International Criminal Police Organization. So let us see the International Criminal Police Organization, commonly called as the Interpol. It's an organization which actually facilitates the collaboration worldwide, police cooperation and collaboration for control of crime or criminal activities. Okay, so it was founded in 1923, and at the end of 1923, International Police Congress that actually took place in Vienna, Austria. Okay, so next one, we will move forward and see the different kinds of notices that it actually issues. Okay, so it comes up with different notices like the red notice, green notice, blue notice, yellow notice, black notice, etc. And each notice actually signifies a certain kind of the criminal, okay, or the person who is actually searched, or an institution which is actually generating or involved in criminal activities. For example, the red notice is actually issued by the Interpol in order to seek information about a particular individual and arrest him, okay, who is involved in the unlawful action. Next, you have the yellow notice. In order to find out or get information about a person who is missing, okay, so this is often related to minors, okay, or in case of people who are unable to identify themselves, then what happens, and yellow notice is actually issued. Then you have a blue notice. This is about collecting additional information about a particular person's identity, okay, or location or activities, and who are actually related to the criminal or unlawful activities. Next one, black notice. This is in if there is any kind of unidentified institution which is actually located across a country or in a particular country, in order to know more about it, then the black notice is actually issued. Next one is a green notice, okay. So this is a kind of warning that the Interpol gives to the intelligence agencies about a person who has committed criminal offences and who are likely to repeat these kind of crimes. So that is when green notice is given. Then orange notice is actually given. That is if there is any kind of threat to the public safety, okay, because of a person, then the orange notice is actually given. Then you have the blue notice. That is, it is issued for groups and individuals who are targets of the UNSC, that is United Nations Security Council Sanction Committee. Then you have the purple notice, okay. So this is to seek information on the mode of operation, that is the modus operandi, the objects, the devices and concealment methods which are actually used by the criminals, okay. So these are all the types of Interpol notices, okay. Now let's move forward and see what are all the objectives of Interpol. Of course, cooperation between the police forces, even when two countries do not have what, any kind of a bilateral relationship, and also to provide expertise to countries for combating cross-border terrorism, trafficking and other crimes. The status is, it is an independent international organization. Don't confuse it. Don't think it is a specialized agency under the UN. No, it is not a part of it, okay. So there are 196 members. Whether India is a part of it or not, yes, India is a part of Interpol, okay. Then the operating structure, it is headquartered in France, in Lyon, okay. So Lyon, that is France, with 7 regional bureaus worldwide, and every country actually has a national central bureau, and that is why the national central bureau in India is CBI, that is the Central Bureau of Investigation, okay. So this actually consists of the police officials of that country, so it is run by the police officials, okay. Now let's move forward and see the governance structure. So it has a General Assembly, which is the supreme governing body, okay, and this is made up of representatives from each member country, and then it has an executive committee which oversees the implementation of the General Assembly's decision as well as the activities of the General Secretariat. The next one, the General Secretariat, is there, headed by a Secretary General, and it coordinates what are all the day-to-day functions. All these are not important, and we saw 8 types of notices which are actually given by or issued in case of emergency depending upon the nature of the crime, okay, like the black, blue, yellow, etc. Now let's move forward to the next one, that is OPEC plus, okay. So this is nothing but an organization for petroleum exporting countries. So they have actually the OPEC plus countries have decided, in order to continue or they extend the deep cuts of the oil in 2025 also, okay. So we will see, what do you mean by deep cuts? Deep oil output cuts, that means they are reducing or cutting their production, okay. So this is what, when there is more production in the market, then what happens, there will be ample supply of oil or crude oil in the market. That means the prices will fall down. And also you have the US, that is no more dependent on the crude oil imports, because itself it's actually, what to say, it is focusing on the shale oil extraction, okay, which are there in the sedimentary rocks. So shale oil is what, so there are the shale formations, okay. So in between or interspersed in these shale formations is this shale oil. It is a kind of crude oil, but it does not flow out as easily, and the extraction also is a very strenuous process. But of late US is actually finding a lot of shale oil deposits. Okay, so that is why they are also producing, so they are no more dependent. So when US is also exporting more than being self sufficient, what happens? It is actually competing, right, with the OPEC nations. So OPEC was initially formed and they were responsible for almost 30% of the production as well as the exports, but now they have a strong competitor. So that is why the prices of these oil, that is the crude oil produced by OPEC and OPEC plus, are falling down. Okay, so that is why they said that our production will actually be very less, and we are extending that policy into 2025 also. Okay, so in US, if you find, it is somewhere in the Texas as well as the Mexican region. Okay, so you can say Permian Basin. This is called Permian Basin, which accounts for 70% of the production of shale oil of the United States. All these are not important. So let's take a 1 minute break and we will continue. Yeah, so let us actually start with the OPEC, and I'm sorry for the delay. So OPEC plus nations, I actually told you, because of excess supply already by the United States and the close competition that is actually posed by the United States on these nations, they have decided to keep their production low, and that is being extended into 2025 also. Okay, so let's move forward and understand what is OPEC. So OPEC is a permanent intergovernmental organization. Okay, so this was created at a conference that was called as what? The Baghdad conference. Very, very important. And in 1960 it got created. And who were the founding members? Extremely, extremely important question. Okay, so founding members are Iran, then Iraq, then you have Saudi, then you have Kuwait, and then you have Venezuela. Venezuela. Okay, so do you understand? So let's actually mark these. So you have Iran over here, and then you have Iraq over here, Kuwait over here, Saudi over here, and then you have Venezuela. This is over here, which is actually one of the two countries who are from what? The South America. Okay, so it is easy, right? Four from this region, that is the you want to say Central Asian region over here, and then you actually have one from the South America. So you have Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Venezuela are the founding members. And another country is also there, that is Ecuador, which has actually shared an on and off relationship in this particular OPEC. Okay, so it has actually been a part in 1973, then it withdrew again in 1992, again came and has been a part in 2007, again withdrew in 2020. Okay, do you understand? And other members of the OPEC include, let's come to Africa. Here you have Nigeria, you can see Nigeria, you have Libya, you have Algeria, you have Equatorial Guinea, you have Gabon, then Angola and the Republic of Congo. And other areas over here include UAE as well as Qatar. Okay, so these are the different countries which are part of OPEC. So let us actually see, the main objective is to bring a unified petroleum practices, okay, across these countries, and also in order to ensure that there is a fair as well as stable price of petroleum products as well as its produce, and ensure there is efficient economic and regular supply of petroleum, okay, so to the petroleum consuming nations. And also you have to make sure that there is a fair return on the capital for those investing in this particular industry. Okay, so the members I told you, Algeria, Angola, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Iran, Iraq. Iran and Iraq both are part of it. Okay, so are they both the founding members? Yes. So Kuwait, Libya, Nigeria, United Arab Emirates, and Venezuela. And Ecuador, on and off relationship we actually saw, and currently it has left the grouping. So next, let's move towards the oil production. The OPEC countries come together and they account for 30% of the world's crude oil production. And over there, Saudi Arabia is actually the largest oil supplier, okay, single largest oil supplier, and it produces around 10 million barrels per day. Can you believe it? 10 million barrels per day. And the reports and outlooks that OPEC actually comes up with, what is the World Oil Outlook, the annual statistical bulletin, and then monthly oil report. And this is actually headquartered again in Vienna, Austria. Okay, so when you are preparing your notes, please prepare a table on the different headquarters of different organizations, the reports that these organizations actually release. Okay, so this is what is one topic of OPEC. Now, let's move into what is OPEC plus. So, there was actually a large scale fall in the oil prices. Okay, so this was because of significant increase in the US shale oil output. I told you US started extracting the shale oil. So, that is why OPEC actually signed an agreement with few more nations, with 10 other oil producing countries, and that is why it is called as the OPEC plus. So it includes the 13 member OPEC along with other countries, that actually includes Mexico, Then it includes Russia, Oman, South Sudan, as well as Sudan, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, then Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan, etc. And it formed the OPEC plus. Do you understand? So this was formed to institutionalize again a framework for cooperation between the OPEC and the non-OPEC producing countries in order to have a regular and sustainable checks on what is the amount of oil they are producing, what is the consumption, what has been exported, etc. Okay, so this is to adjust the crude oil production and to bring stability in the price of the crude oil that is produced in the market. Next, oil production, the OPEC plus contribute to around 40% of the world's crude oil production, and they control around 80% of the oil reserves. Okay, so this is what is OPEC and OPEC plus. Next, let's move towards IPEF, that is Indo-Pacific Economic Forum. So you have the Ministry of Commerce as well as Industry. So the industry as well as Commerce Minister virtually attended the meeting of the Indo-Pacific Economic Forum alongside the IPEF partners. Okay, so let's move forward and understand what is this IPEF. So this is nothing but it is a regional initiative that aims to foster, I told you, aims to foster cooperation and economic integration within this Indo-Pacific region. Okay, so this concept or the IPEF was actually launched recently only in 2022 by the then President of the United States, Mr. Joe Biden, in order to make the Indo-Pacific region inclusive, in order to promote the resilience as well as sustainability in the region, the fairness, the economical growth, the equitable growth and competitiveness among the regions which are present in the Indo-Pacific. The members to this are 14 partner countries. Okay, so this actually includes you have Australia, Brunei, Fiji. India is a part of IPEF or not? Yes, India is a part. Alongside, we have Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand. You have United States, Vietnam, Malaysia, New Zealand, etc. Okay, so these are all the countries in IPEF. Let's see what are all the pillars it actually focuses on. Of course, it focuses on trade because there has to be economic stability and integration in the region. Next one, it actually relates to that of the supply chain. Okay, so supply chain resilience. And in the region, whatever you are producing and you are trading and whatever is in your supply chain, you have to be cautious about the deployment of clean energy as well as decarbonization alongside your infrastructure development. Okay, so supply chain, next one is trade, next one is clean energy, and then they focused on taxes as well as all the anti-corruption measures. Okay, so here not that all the countries actually will have an FTA under this arrangement, it is not that, but in any other, in these four pillars, whatever they are actually convenient in, they will actually sign it. Okay, so for example, India has opted out of trade because if they once sign it, they actually have to comply with this international standard, that is the IPEF standard. That is why India is actually opted out of the trade pillar, because there can be any kind of issues with respect to that of Indian trade policies if it does not align with the IPEF pillars. Okay, so it is not a free trade agreement. Instead, it allows the members to selectively engage in negotiations in different aspects of the framework. If I don't like trade, I can actually involve only in the supply chain. I can assure them, yes, I will take care that my demand and the supply side constraints are not there. I will take care my supply chain is actually not, it's sustainable, it is environmental friendly, etc. Okay, so in that aspect I can engage. Okay, so this is what is the IPEF. Okay, now let us actually move on to the next article, IMF lending instrument. So even now you know that International Monetary Fund has actually approved the loans to what? Pakistan. So are you aware of that or not? Are you aware of the fact that IMF has actually approved loans to Pakistan? Anyone in the comment section? Okay. So recently, loans have actually been approved to Pakistan as a part of what? As a part of the EPF. Okay. So what do you mean by this particular ECF? ECF is what? What does ECF actually stands for? Please mention in the comment section. Okay, fine. Let me only tell you. So ECF actually stands for Extended Credit Facility. So under ECF, see, there are different instruments under which the IMF actually lends. Okay. So earlier in 2023, if you see, there was the SBA instrument. This is nothing but the standby arrangement. Standby arrangement. So under this, around $3 billion were actually sanctioned for Pakistan for their economic stability. Okay. So similarly, there are different other instruments like what? Extended Credit Facility, that is your ECF. So Extended Credit Facility. This ECF is what is under which right now IMF has actually sanctioned loan to Pakistan. Do you understand? So India actually says that there has to be strict monitoring of the purposes for which the IMF lending is actually done. Whether the loans that are given by the IMF is not used for any other kind of purposes, like for example, the defense procurement, or to repay their already existing loans to some other country, etc. Okay, so that has to be taken care of is what India has stated right now. So the extended credit facility recently seen in news is a part of which of the following? This basic question was asked in your prelims examination. So you need to know it is a part of IMF lending. For that you need to know what do you mean by IMF and what are the different loan instruments that IMF actually carries forward. So in July 2023, IMF has approved a 9-month standby arrangement for Pakistan. So this was worth 3 billion in order to support the economic stabilization program of Pakistan. Now let's move forward and see everything quickly. Okay, so there is a standby arrangement. So this is nothing but in case of any balance of payments is there, that is your imports far exceeds compared to that of your exports, then what happens? You can actually ask for a loan under the standby arrangement from IMF, and they will give you in case if you are an emerging and advanced market economy, and the duration will be like 12 to 24 months and it can extend up to 36 months, but you have to repay within a period of 3 to 5 years. Next one, standby credit facility. This is also similar, and again this is a short term loan. This is for the low income countries, okay, under PRGT. What do you mean by PRGT? This is poverty reduction and growth trust. Okay, and then duration is actually not mentioned, and the grace period is 4 years and the final maturity is 8 years. Next, extended fund facility. Okay, extended fund facility, don't confuse this with extended credit facility. Okay, so longer term balance of payment problems, okay, because of structural impediments to growth. So here it applies to emerging as well as the advanced market economics, okay, economies, and then typically 3 years and you have to repay it within 4 to 10 years. So the period won't be asked, you just have to know the names of the credit instruments. Okay, next one, loan instruments. So next one is extended credit facility. So this addresses medium to long term loans. This is to low income countries. This is also under PRGT. Initially 3 years and it can be extended to 5 years also. You actually have to repay within 10 years, and a grace period of up to 5 years is actually given. Next one is rapid financing instrument. Next, rapid credit facility, flexible credit facility. This is providing rapid financial assistance as it is actually told in the name itself. This is for assisting the countries in order to meet their volatility with respect to urgent balance of payment conditions. All the member countries 3.25 to 5 years. Next one, again, rapid financial assistance during crisis. Here also to the low income countries. Here grace period is 5 years and maturity is 10 years. Next one, flexible credit facilities. That is, if any country is facing an immediate cash crunch, then you actually provide them. But this country, in case if it has a strong policy framework, these are the countries which are eligible, and these are renewable to 1 to 2 years, and then 3 to 5 years is actually your repayment period. Then you have precautionary liquidity line, okay, PLL. This is meet the liquidity need of the countries. Okay, that is the countries which are already strong with their frameworks, but they actually face some kind of volatility like the external shocks, etc. Then you actually provide them. So countries with sound but not strong enough frameworks, okay, like the currency weakening suddenly, etc. All that is included here. So here there is actually nothing mentioned about the duration of the loan period as well as the time which you have to repay. Next one is catastrophic containment and relief trust. So this is during catastrophic disasters, okay, and then the poorest of poor countries receive it. Next one is policy support instrument. So this is to secure the advice of the IMF without any financial assistance. So this actually shows the confidence to the donors and creditors, again to low income countries 1 to 5 years. Okay, so this is what it is, and here no financing. Okay, so what is this? Yeah, the financial assistance is not provided, but then you are actually seeking the advice of the IMF on how to act during the crisis. Okay, so these are all the loan instruments of the IMF. Next one, let's move to International Energy Agency. So International Energy Agency has recently stated that it will be discussing about the full-time membership of India. Okay, so let's quickly jump into discussing what do you mean by the International Energy Agency. Okay, so it is an autonomous and it is an intergovernmental agency. So it is an autonomous and intergovernmental organization, and this actually functions within the framework of OECD, which is nothing but the Organization for Economic Cooperation as well as Development. Okay, so if the country actually has to be a part of IEA, they have to be a part of OECD framework also. Okay, very, very important. So this was actually established in the year 1974 post the oil crisis. Yesterday we actually discussed, right, after which this was actually formed, and then mission is to ensure that there is reliable, affordable as well as clean energy for the member countries and beyond. The membership right now consists of 31 member countries and 11 associate countries, and associate countries must also be a part of this OECD status. Headquarters is in Paris, France. Okay, nothing much to understand here. All these are static. So what are the membership criteria? If I wish or India wishes to become a part of the IEA, what India should do? We must maintain an oil reserve which is equivalent to the total amount of oil we have imported. Okay, net imports for the past 90 days. Okay, so equivalent to 90 days of the previous year's net imports. Okay, over the past 90 days we should have maintained the oil reserve that is more than the net import of the previous year. Next one, implement a program to cut the oil consumption by 10% during emergency. In case of crisis, you have to be in a position to cut down by 10% of the consumption. Next one, enact legislation for the emergency response measurement and then, measures. Next one, obligate the oil companies to report information in case there is any request with respect to how much they are producing, what they are doing, what are the methods that are used, etc. And also process measures to partake IEA collective actions. And India's association with IEA has been since 2011 and recently 2017, and it has recently applied for the full-time membership. What are all the other reports that the IEA comes up with? World Energy Outlook, World Energy Balances, Energy Technology Perspectives, World Energy Statistics, and Net Zero by 2050. Okay, so these are all the publications that the IEA comes up with. Okay, now if you see what are all the functions of the IEA, so all these are the core competencies of IEA. Focuses on emergency response, data and analysis. That is why all the companies actually have to provide on request. Energy policy review, what is the technology, collaboration and promotion of the efficient as well as clean energy systems. Okay, so these are all the competencies. Next, let's move forward to the next one, Codex Alimentarius Commission. Okay, so don't think this is some scientific commission. CAC, Codex Alimentarius Commission, this actually focuses on the or protects the consumer health. Okay, consumer health, and that is why recently it has actually praised India's standards on millets. Okay, so this is why this particular committee has actually been in news. So it is an international food standards body that actually helps in protecting the consumer health, and it actually makes sure that there is fair practices of trade, okay, specifically with respect to food. And it has been jointly established by the very famous organizations, that is FAO and WHO, Food and Agriculture Organization, as well as WHO, and it came into existence in 1963. The recognition is the Agreement on Application of Sanitary and Phytosanitary Measures of the WTO recognizes the Codex standards, okay, as this is actually the reference standards for international trade and trade dispute settlement, whichever is related to that of the food trade, okay. The membership is around 189 members are there, and India also became a part of the CAC, Codex Alimentarius Commission, which actually relates to the security or protecting the health of the consumer in the year 1964. Okay, it was very early, so it became a part of it. Okay, so this is about the commission. Let's talk about the Globe Network. So India has actually been elected to the steering committee of this Globe Network during the session that actually recently took place in Beijing. Okay, so we need to know what this network is about. It is an anti-corruption agency. Okay, so it actually invites all these kind of national anti-corruption agencies which are a part of different countries in order to come and collaborate and fight against corruption. That's it. Okay, so as a part of representation from India, we have the Central Bureau of Investigation and the Enforcement Directorate being a part of this particular body. Okay, so far if you have any doubts, please do ask me. Okay, so let us actually continue with the Globe Network. Okay, so India has been elected to the steering committee of the Globe Network during its plenary session, which recently took place in Beijing. Okay, so what is the full form of GLOBE? This is nothing but Global Operation Network for Anti-Corruption Law Enforcement, okay, authorities. So this is what it is, and this has been an initiative of the G20. So when it got launched, why is it not marking? So when it got launched on 2021, okay. So at the UN General Assembly special session against corruption. So this is supported by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, and this actually provides for its secretariat. What are the objectives? Of course, take place the the anti-corruption efforts, and also share the best practices across the nations where we are actually taking up the intelligence operations as well as the law enforcement against the corruption. Okay, and the next one, support strategies to combat cross-border financial crimes as well as corruption. Okay, so this is what is the Globe Network. The members are around 121 countries and 219 law enforcement authorities. Okay, so this number is as of 2024, not important again. So the governance is, there is actually one chair and one vice chair and around 13 members. Okay, and next, if you look at India's role, India has been a member since the inception itself, that is 2021. Here the Ministry of Home Affairs is the central authority in India, where you have the CBI as well as the EDR representatives in the Globe Network on behalf of India. Okay, so this is what is about the Globe Network. So next we will quickly move on to discuss various key initiatives by other organizations. Okay, these are equally important. Let me actually have a sip of water and continue with this particular topic. Okay, so key initiatives by other organizations like UNFCCC, the World Bank, etc. If in case we have not discussed that in detail, we'll just discuss about what is the what is the program or the initiative led by which organization and the description of that. Okay, there are few of it, around 1 2 3. 1 minute, let me see. Okay, so there are around 16 of them, so we will quickly go through. Okay, so just scan the board and let me just have a sip of water and get back. Okay, let's quickly start with the key initiatives of other organizations. Here I will actually take you through these organizations very quickly. Okay, so first one is Spotlight Initiative. I will tell you, quicker buzzwords also. Whenever in the exam, if you spot the word spotlight, okay, so think women are in the spotlight. Why am I not able to write? Yeah, imagine women. Okay, so who is too much concerned about women? The United Nations and the European Union. So Spotlight Initiative brought by the United Nations and European Union in order to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls. Okay, so how do? They actually involve or deploy targeted investments in over 25 countries across various regions in order to prevent this kind of violence against women. That's it. Spotlight, women, United Nations and EU. Next one, climate neutral now. What it actually focuses on? It focuses on reducing carbon emissions. Only when you reduce the carbon emissions, what happens? You can actually achieve this climate neutral, right? So that who is actually concerned? It is UNFCCC. Easy. So emissions, UNFCCC. So, climate neutral now by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and it is actually encouraging organizations and individuals to measure, reduce and offset the carbon emissions, and this is also focusing on climate neutral by 2050. So, that is why it has climate neutral now. So, UNFCCC by whom? By the, it actually focuses on climate neutral by 2050, that is carbon emission cut. Next one, 50 into 50 cross 2030. So what does this mean? 50 cross 2030. If you are so confused, I just remember it like that. If you are so confused, can it be anything related to economy or can it be anything related to banking or agriculture? Yes, here this is what? This is nothing but 50 cross 2030 is some data, right, which you did not understand. So, in order to close the gap with the agricultural data, there has been an initiative by the World Bank. So, think like that. Specifically in the low as well as the middle income countries, there are gaps with respect to agricultural data. So, if you see this 50 cross to 2030, remember gaps in agricultural data by the World Bank. Okay, bank is related to this data. So, close the agricultural data is a multi-agency partnership which empowers the low and the middle income countries with better agricultural data by 2030 to support what? The data centric or you can say evidence based decision making. Okay, so this is what is the 50 cross 2030 initiative. Next, let's move forward and read about the RE100. Okay, so what do you mean by this RE100? Any guesses of what is RE100? Okay, so let us see. RE100 is nothing but this is renewable energy. Okay, so RE is what? Renewable energy. So this is by the climate group and the CDP. CDP is nothing but the carbon disclosure project. Disclosure project. That is, all the countries must commit to 100% renewable electricity. Okay, so the companies must actually commit to 100%. So RE, renewable energy, 100%. This is by group of companies. So climate group, remember it like that. Okay, climate group as well as the carbon disclosure project in order to accelerate the transition to the climate neutral future. Okay, so this is what this is. Next one, if you see action for climate empowerment, okay, action for climate empowerment. This is also something with respect to the climate, right? So what? The society actually has to engage in what? Taking climate action. So again, climate, it is UNFCCC, okay, UNFCCC. So this is to empower all the members in the society in order to engage in the climate action effectively. So did you understand this one? What is the previous one? Climate neutral now. Again what? Climate empowerment. Climate neutral, climate empowerment. All this is by UNFCCC. Okay. So here also you're empowering all the members of the society in order to take action against the climate change. Next one, net zero asset owner alliance. Okay, net zero asset owner alliance. Do you understand what do you mean by asset and everything? Okay, so this something relates to asset creation, something with respect to, if you have no idea, something with respect to investment, something with respect to creation of assets over here. Okay, FPI, FDI, something like that. Okay, so asset, if you have the options over here, you need to see what is the program, okay, which actually gives incentive to the kind of projects which actually focuses on the environment. This is United Nations Environment Program Finance Initiative, UNEP. This is where a group of institutional investors, they come together in transitioning their investment portfolios to net zero GHG by 2050, supporting the climate goals. Okay, so this is also one thing. And apart from the net zero asset owner, that is, you have to create the assets, which is actually economy, with respect to that of the climate change. So UNEP financial initiative. Okay, do you understand? Next one is plastic waste partnership. Okay, plastic waste partnership. This is also something related to that of what? Plastic pollution. So there will be a global what to say, a collaboration on how to manage your plastic waste, and in order to promote the circular economy for sustainability. So that is by the Basel Convention. So Basel Convention and the again UNEP. So UNEP so far has come with asset creation, okay, in the environment with respect to net zero. The next one is with respect to plastic waste partnership. Okay, so far we have actually completed 4 plus 3 7. So we have 9 more. Next one is race to zero. Again something with respect to net zero. Okay, so this is a global campaign. It actually includes businesses, cities and investors in order to achieve net zero emissions by the year 2050 in line with the Paris Agreement. So again, this is with respect to UNFCCC race to zero. Race to zero means race so fast that you actually achieve your net zero, okay, by 2050. So this is by UNFCCC. Next one, 1 trillion trees initiative, okay, in order to conserve as well as restore. Okay, what do you restore? The trees. Okay, around 1 trillion trees by the year 2030 in order to combat climate change. You need to understand who is actually placing all these things. Just build up a story or a mnemonic. That is when you will understand. Okay, so 1 trillion trees, don't think it is UNEP. It is not UNEP, it is World Economic Forum. World Economic, remember that, 1 trillion tree across the world. Okay, so World Economic Forum. Then you have the 50 cross 2050. Okay, so already we actually saw what? 50 cross 2030. So didn't we see that? Let's revisit that again. 50 cross 2030. This is actually a World Bank initiative. This is actually a data. I told you, right? A data, agricultural data. There is gap. World Bank provides for it. So similarly, if you see 50 into 2050. Okay. So this is nothing but enable 50 low income countries to have again the robust data systems in order to help the development policies. Okay, by 2030 it is agriculture, by 2050 is development, and since it is actually development, what happens? It is global partnership for sustainable development data. Okay, so this is the framework. Next one is what? 30 cross 30 ocean alliance. So this is by this and all you have to memorize only. It is the charitable trust and the high ambition coalition. So this is a global push to protect 30% of the world's oceans by 2030 through marine protected areas and biodiversity conservation. Okay, the next one, I think this is the last set. Okay, so the next one is 30 cross 30 alliance. We saw this, right? Next one is net zero banking alliance. Very, very important. If you have attempted the Saksham test, which we actually conducted, we had this question, net zero banking alliance. So what do you mean by net zero banking alliance? This is nothing but the United Nations Environment Program, again financial institution, This is nothing but group of banks committed to aligning with the investment portfolios with respect to achieving net zero by 2050. Next one, leaf coalition. Leaf is what? Lowering the emissions by accelerating forest finance. Okay, so this is by collaborative effort of UK, US, Norway and private sector. Don't think any other organization is involved over here. It aims to mobilize around $1 billion for tropical forest conservation, okay, as well as the carbon credit markets. Next one, global cooling pledge. Important here, global cooling pledge is again by UNEP. Okay, so when you actually have all these things, please mark it down which are all the initiatives by UNEP. Aims to reduce cooling related emissions by 68% and the target is 2050. So this can be done by focusing on energy efficient refrigeration and air conditioning. Okay, so UNEP, we would have discussed this global cooling pledge, UNEP. Okay, so next, now that we are done with what these international organizations, around 20 or 25 international organizations we are actually done with. Okay, so now we will move on to another important section. This is nothing but regional groupings. Okay, so what are the regional groupings? And there are around 12 regional groupings. We will try to finish it in the next half an hour span. So I told you one is actually your ASEAN, it's just a recollection. Okay, so next is India wants to be a part of RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, and again there is actually what to say, a talk on reviving, that is the Bangladeshi interim government leader has actually asked for or proposed the revival of functioning of South Asian Association of Regional Cooperation, that is the SARC. Next we will be talking about the Pacific Island Forum. Recently the meeting actually took place in Tonga, and then we will discuss about the BIMSTEC, okay, where India actually hosted the second ministerial conference of BIMSTEC. Next, we'll talk about the Colombo Security Conclave, where Bangladesh actually happened to be the fifth member, which joined recently in the year 2024. Then we'll talk about India assuming the chair of the Colombo process. What is it? What are the thematic working groups over there? We'll discuss. Then we'll talk about the global, what to say, Gulf Cooperation Council, Gulf Cooperation Council, that actually brought about a unified tourist visa just like the European Schengen visa. Then we'll talk about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, where the meeting actually took place recently, that is Astana. Who are the members? Whether Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, all those things are actually, all those countries are a part of this or not. And then we spoke about Burkina Faso as well as Niger moving out this ECOWAS, that also we'll be discussing. Finally, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and Mercosur are the topics that we will be taking up one by one. Let's try to complete them. Okay, so the foreign ministers of the ASEAN grouping recently there's actually the civil war. I told you the army actually overthrew the government, right? So they have actually asked the military junta in order to take care of the ceasefire or to come to a peaceful agreement rather than focusing on the fresh elections. Okay, so this is what is your ASEAN. That is why this particular topic has been in the news. Okay, so let us actually see. The foreign ministers of the ASEAN grouping has asked the Myanmar's junta to prioritize a ceasefire of its civil war over the fresh elections. Let's quickly see what is ASEAN. Okay, so ASEAN established in the year 1967 in Bangkok, and this actually is called as the Bangkok Declaration or the ASEAN Declaration. Okay, 1967 in Thailand. The purpose was for economic, social, as well as technical and educational cooperation for regional peace and stability. Okay, in this particular Southeast Asian nations. If you see different members, you can see Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia, Singapore, as well as Indonesia. These are all the ASEAN members. That is 10 members are there, where the founding members are nothing but they are, remember it like STIMP. Okay, STIMP. So that is Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia and Philippines. Okay, so the STIMP are the founding members. Okay, and then you have The current members 10, that is founding members 5, plus you have the Brunei, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar and Cambodia. If you know these founding members, it's easier to accommodate the other 5 or spot the other 5. This is ASEAN. The the headquarters is actually located in Jakarta, that is Indonesia. And recently, if you see, this East Timor has actually been given the observer status and is expected to become a full-time member in 2025. Population size, it is actually combined 650 million people. So this is the third most populous region in the world. If you see the GDP size, it is $3 trillion. Okay, it's the 7th largest economy globally. And if you see institutional mechanism, there is this ASEAN Summit, which is the policy making body, okay, that comprises of heads from these different ASEAN members, and the chairmanship is rotating annually. This is actually based on the alphabetical order. So this is how it happens at the UNSC also, but it happens monthly in the alphabetical order. So this is what is about ASEAN grouping. And also there is this ASEAN free trade area. This actually aims to create a single market and production base. Okay. So what is the significance of ASEAN for India is that first one, there is economic integration. Okay. So because of this, there is enhancement of trade and investment opportunities, and this also supports India's Act East policy. Okay. So this is one. Next one, there is strategic partnership, because this actually lies in the Indo-Pacific region. Next one, key challenges is there are internal political issues within the member states, because if you see Myanmar, there is civil war that is actually going on, and then you have China's assertiveness, which is located in the South China Sea. There are territorial conflicts and so on. Okay, so this is about your ASEAN. Next, let's see ASEAN led forums. First one, ASEAN Regional Forum. Next is East Asia Summit and the ASEAN plus 3. Okay, so we will see this one by one. Okay, so here the first one is your ASEAN Regional Forum. So this actually was established in 1994. I will zoom it if you guys cannot see. Okay, so see, ASEAN Regional Forum consists of 27 members, came into existence in 1994. So this basically focuses on dialogue as well as cooperation of the regions in the Indo-Pacific. So peace in the Indo-Pacific is the most important thing. Next, chaired annually by the ASEAN chair. Next, if you have the East Asia Summit. So it is a premier leaders-led forum, and this started in 2005. Okay, and this is by the Kuala Lumpur Declaration, and it facilitates dialogue and cooperation for peace and stability and prosperity for the East Asian regions. Next one is ASEAN Plus. Okay, so let us actually see ASEAN Plus. So this includes the 10 of the ASEAN members along with the countries of China, Japan and South Korea. And to this, if you actually add Australia and New Zealand, what grouping is a part of it? Please tell me in the comment section. What is the grouping named as? Please tell me. So this ASEAN plus 3 is actually, it was initiated in the year 1997 in order to foster regional cooperation. Okay, so this is about ASEAN. Very quickly we saw, right, it actually has 10 members. Where is the headquarters? Whether India is a part of it or not. All those we discussed very quickly, how it is actually significant for India. Okay, don't be alarmed by this big titles which are actually given here. Okay, next one we will be discussing about RCEP. RCEP. Okay, so here if we see, the CEO of Niti Aayog recently actually expressed that India has to be included in the regional comprehensive economic partnership. This is where we saw those countries which I mentioned, right, along with Australia and New Zealand. We will see the RCEP as well as the CPTPP. What do you mean by that? Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. Okay, so this is what it is. So now let us see, these are the ASEAN countries. These are the 10 countries. Along with that, there are non-ASEAN countries, like I told you, China, you have Japan, you have New Zealand and Australia. So these are together which actually makes the RCEP members. Okay, easy to remember. So RCEP, it is a major free trade agreement in the Asia Pacific region. Okay, it includes 15 countries, I told you, 10 ASEAN nations plus 5 FTA partners, that is China, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, as well as South Korea. Either hai. Okay, the objective is economic integration because they have to reduce the number of trade barriers. If you have a free trade agreement, then what happens, there will not be much of the trade barrier, so that you can carry out seamless trade in this particular region and your investment will also flow in this region. Okay, so this is what is RCEP. Next one, the size and the significance. If you see, it is one of the largest. Okay, so it is currently the world's largest trade bloc because it constitutes the countries that account for 30% of the global GDP and 30% of the world's population. Okay, do you understand? So the negotiations for this RCEP began in 2012 and India was part of it. However, in 2019, India actually decided to move out of the RCEP because of the tensions that it had with respect to that of China. And RCEP was officially signed in 2020 and became operational in January 2022. Okay, so this is what is your RCEP. So why did India move out of RCEP? Because we actually had trade deficit. Okay, that is our imports with respect to the exports was actually more. So there was tariff reductions. This is where expected to worsen India's already ongoing trade deficits with many other countries, especially with respect to China. That is, the amount we actually import from China is more. Okay, so RCEP came into effect. In fact, okay, for instance, it came into effect, and then what happened is that ASEAN's trade deficit with China also grew. So looking at this, India also feared that this is actually going to grow. And also, when there is a free trade agreement between two countries, India was scared of China's dumping into the Indian market. So this will actually harm the domestic industries of India. Okay, and specifically this is going to affect India's steel as well as the textile sectors. And also we had the what is a unfavorable the relationship or past experiences with that of China. So that is why India moved out of RCEP. Okay, next one, all this is actually not very important. Next we will see about the CPTPP. Okay, this is nothing but Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. This is also an FTA. It is a free trade agreement between 11 countries in the Asia Pacific region. Okay, so this was first signed in 2018 and came into effect as a successor of the TPP, that is your Trans-Pacific Partnership. Okay, after US exited the TPP in 2017. Who are all the member countries? Very important. Australia, then you have Singapore, Vietnam, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand and Peru. Okay, next one, here UK also agreed to join this particular CTPP in the year 2023. Okay, and all these people are also a part of APEC, that is Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. Okay, so this is what you need to know about this Trans-Pacific or the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement on Trans-Pacific Partnership. Okay, so economic significance and all is not very important. So you just have to know India opted not to join this particular CPTPP. Whether India is part of it or not, you need to know. Okay, so here let's move forward and see signatories as well as the applicants. Okay, so these are all the people who signed it, like Canada, Mexico, Peru, Chile, New Zealand. Those in orange are the signatories, whereas the applicants are UK, Ukraine, and then China, Taiwan, Uruguay, Ecuador, as well as Costa Rica. Okay, so this is what it is. Now it is a comparative note. This is very important for us to understand. Okay, so RCEP consists of 15 members, 10 ASEAN members plus 5 FTA members, right? Here it consists of 11 countries. Very, very important. So who are the ASEAN members who are also part of it? Let's see. You have Singapore, Vietnam as well as Malaysia. Okay, and who are the FTA members who are part of it? Of course, Japan, New Zealand, and then do you have any other country over here? No, you don't, and Australia. Okay, so these are all the countries which are same to same, that is around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So remaining countries alone you need to remember. So Canada, Chile, Mexico, as well as what else we did? Brunei, as well as Peru. So these are the countries which are part of Trans-Pacific Partnership. Okay. Next one, about 30% of the global GDP and 30% of the population. Here only around 13 to 14% of the global GDP. The tariff commitments is that there is elimination of tariffs because it's a FTA, right? So elimination of tariffs on 90% of goods over 20 years. Here if you see, 95% of the tariffs are eliminated immediately over shorter timelines with minimal exemptions. Here rules of origin, here flexible diagonal cumulation enabling the sourcing from any member country, not important. Here full cumulation enhancing supply chain integration across the members. See, don't confuse with all these things. These are pure economic terms. You just need to know who are the members, who are the members, who are not the members. Did India join RCEP? Yes, it is willing to join this RCEP in considering, I mean, it's in, transition of considering a full-time membership. And here it is actually not a part of it. Okay. So labor standards, this is not important. Please let's ignore all these things and then move towards next one, that is your SARC. Okay. So let's actually be mindful of the time. Okay. So we are already close to 4. So anyways, we will actually continue with the other regional grouping in the next class. Okay. So we will continue with SARC as well as the Mercosur as well as AIFF in the other class. I mean the next class, which I will actually meet you positively tomorrow, another live session. Okay. So thank you all so much for actually joining the live session. I will meet you tomorrow with another live session where we will mostly complete this particular, the regional groupings, and we will start with geopolitics, where we will discuss about the IORA, the Indian Ocean Conference, the Belt and Road Initiative, as well as the TAPI pipeline. All that we will discuss. Okay. And after which we just have to move towards the agreements and treaties. The bilateral relations are there. Then that's it. With that, we'll finish the important organizations. We will move to important locations and miscellaneous articles. Okay. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we will actually meet you tomorrow in yet another live session. Okay. Thank you. எதுக்குடா கால் பண்ண? சரி போ, போய் நீரு. ஆமா, after that I didn't prepare only. Come.